When the 7.8 earthquake devastated Portimira, could one stranger turn chaos into hope? Emergency teams faced impossible choices. Buildings reduced to rubble. Dozens trapped with oxygen running out. That's when she appeared. A woman with no uniform, no credentials, just a weathered backpack and unnerving confidence. Emergency Chief Morik was about to send her away when she spoke. Your assessment is wrong. Northeast corner, 4 air pockets. They have less than 6 hours. Who was the stranger directing professionals with military precision? Why did she know exactly where survivors were buried? And why, when the military helicopter landed, did the commanding officer look at her not with suspicion, but recognition? As survivors emerged from impossible depths, whispers spread through rescue ranks. Who is she? And why does she keep disappearing when cameras arrive? Welcome to Graceful Valor Stories. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story of an unsung hero resonates with you, consider subscribing to hear more extraordinary tales of those who change lives without seeking the spotlight. The coastal city of Portimira shuddered as the 7.8 earthquake rolled through its foundations. Buildings swayed, roads buckled, and the iconic glass-fronted Meridian apartment complex collapsed in on itself like a house of cards. Emergency Chief Thaddeus Morik wiped sweat and concrete dust from his brow as he established a command post in what was once the city's central plaza. 23 years in emergency services hadn't prepared him for this level of devastation. Chief, we've got confirmed survivors in the elementary school and the Meridian, Lieutenant Rafferty reported, pointing to the map. But we don't have enough equipment for both. State disaster response is at least 8 hours out. Deputy Mayor Freya Bannister pushed her way into the command tent. The governor's office is demanding updates. What do we tell the press? Tell them we're doing our damn job, Morik snapped, then softened. Sorry, Freya. Tell them we're prioritizing based on structural assessments and life signs. That's when he noticed her. A woman standing quietly at the edge of the tent. Mid-30s, lean build, wearing practical clothes that weren't quite civilian, but not official either. Unlike the panicked civilians or the harried emergency workers, she stood completely still, studying their operational maps with unusual focus. Ma'am, this area is restricted, Rafferty said, moving toward her. Civilian gathering point is 2 blocks east. The woman didn't respond immediately. Instead, she studied the structural diagrams of the Meridian that Morik's team had hastily assembled. Your assessment is wrong, she finally said, her voice surprisingly calm. The Meridian's foundation was built on reclaimed land. The main support columns are compromised here, here, and here. She pointed to specific areas on the diagram. You have survivors in at least 4 air pockets, but the most critical is the northeast corner. That section will collapse completely within 6 hours. Rafferty scoffed. And you know how exactly? She didn't answer, but Morik noticed something. Military-issued boots beneath civilian pants. And when she reached for a bottle of water, he glimpsed unusual scars on her forearm, the kind he'd seen on Special Forces operatives. Do you have credentials? Morik asked. No, she replied simply, already turning to leave. But those people have approximately 5 hours and 43 minutes of oxygen left. Your choice. Before Morik could respond, paramedic Octavia Wells rushed into the tent. Chief, we've got life signs at the Meridian. Multiple survivors, but the structure's extremely unstable. Morik looked up to question the mysterious woman further, but she was already gone, walking with deliberate purpose toward the Meridian's ruins. Who was that? Octavia asked, watching her go. I have no idea, Morik answered. But I think we're about to find out. Could her skills be the key to saving more lives? At the Meridian collapse site, chaos reigned. Rescue workers shouted conflicting instructions while structural engineers argued about which sections might hold. Portable lights cast harsh shadows across the mountain of concrete and twisted metal. And then there she was, the woman from the command tent, methodically unpacking equipment from her weathered backpack. Not standard emergency gear, but specialized tools. Laser measuring devices, structural sensors, compact cutting tools that looked military grade or beyond. Lieutenant Rafferty noticed her immediately. "Hey, you can't be here. This is a restricted area." The woman ignored him, setting up a small device that projected what appeared to be a three-dimensional rendering of the building's remains. She studied it intently, then walked to a seemingly random spot in the rubble. "There are 3 survivors in an air pocket approximately 12 foot down," she stated, pointing. 2 adults, 1 child. Their oxygen will deplete in approximately 4 hours. "And how could you possibly know that?" challenged Lo Kiran, the city structural engineer. The woman responded with precise calculations about load-bearing capacity, debris distribution, and probable survival pockets based on the building's collapse pattern. Information so detailed and technically accurate that Kiran fell silent, staring at her in disbelief. By now, Chief Morik had arrived, intending to remove this civilian from the dangerous site. But Octavia intervened. "Chief, what if she's right? We're flying blind here. Maybe we should give her 5 minutes." Desperation won over protocol. After 5 minutes, Morik agreed. Not 1 second more. What happened next astonished everyone. The woman directed the rescue team with calm, precise instructions using techniques none of them had seen before. She identified exactly where to place support beams, which debris could be safely moved, and how to create an extraction tunnel without triggering a secondary collapse. And exactly where she predicted, they found survivors, a young couple and their 8-year-old daughter, Rin Calloway. As the girl was lifted from the rubble, she stared at the woman. "Are you an angel?" she asked. The woman's expression softened for just a moment. "No," she replied quietly. "Just someone who knows what to look for." But as Rin was carried to safety, she turned back. "Your necklace," the girl called out. "It has numbers on it." The woman quickly tucked something, dog tags, back beneath her shirt, but not before several rescuers noticed. Chief Morik approached her as news crews began arriving at the perimeter. "You clearly have training, military." "Does it matter?" she countered, already studying her 3D rendering for the next extraction point. "We have 27 more people trapped in this building. Clock's ticking." And so it continued through the night. The mysterious woman directing increasingly complex rescue operations, saving lives with uncanny precision while avoiding the spotlight. She worked tirelessly, taking only brief 20-minute naps while others rested. By dawn, rumors spread through the rescue teams. Some said she was a former Special Forces soldier. Others claimed she'd survived a similar disaster. The only thing everyone agreed on was that without her, dozens would already be dead. Octavia had taken to assisting the woman directly, fascinated by her methods and determined to learn. During a rare quiet moment while they calibrated equipment, she finally asked the question everyone wanted to know. "Do you have a name?" The woman paused as if weighing how much to reveal. "Saren," she finally said. "Just Saren." A slight nod was the only response. "How do you know so much about structural collapse patterns? These techniques aren't standard anywhere." Saren continued adjusting her equipment. "Experience." "Military experience," Octavia pressed. Saren's hand stilled for a fraction of a second, almost imperceptible. "Some things you learn the hard way." Before Octavia could ask more, Saren's device emitted a series of beeps. She studied the readout, her expression darkening. "The northeast corner is destabilizing faster than projected. We need to move now." They rushed to the indicated section where Saren directed an immediate evacuation of rescue workers just minutes before a secondary collapse sent tons of concrete crashing down. "How did you know?" Lieutenant Rafferty asked, staring at the fresh rubble where his team had been working moments before. "Micro vibrations in the support structure," Saren explained briefly. "Your conventional equipment isn't sensitive enough to detect them." Rafferty's skepticism was beginning to fade, replaced by grudging respect. "Where did you get that tech?" "It's not civilian, and I've never seen it in any standard military kit. Custom was all Saren offered." By midday, word of the mysterious woman's success had reached higher authorities. More equipment arrived along with additional rescue teams who were immediately directed to report to the specialist now running operations at the Meridian site. Late in the afternoon, as Saren prepared for another extraction, a military helicopter landed at the makeshift landing zone nearby. The sharp whine of its engines cut through the constant rumble of generators and rescue equipment. A man in uniform approached the command post, Major Everett Tolan, his insignia marking him as part of a specialized division none of the local team recognized. He scanned the area with calculated precision until his gaze locked onto Saren. For a brief moment, something like recognition passed between them, though Saren quickly turned away, focusing intensely on her work. Talon watched her for several minutes, his expression unreadable. Then he made a call on a secure satellite phone, moving far enough away that no one could overhear. "Confirm identity match," he said into the device. Subject Serena Dare, classification Umbra Protocol, proceeding with containment. He ended the call and continued observing from a distance, making no move to approach Saren directly. Whatever his mission, it appeared he was content to wait. As night fell again, the rescue efforts continued under portable floodlights. The death toll had risen to 47 confirmed with dozens still missing. But at the Meridian site, something remarkable was happening. 17 survivors have been extracted alive so far. All because of Saren's inexplicable ability to locate air pockets and direct precision rescues. Chief Morik had fully ceded operational control of the Meridian rescue to Saren, focusing his attention on coordinating the broader city response. The results spoke for themselves. Her methods were saving lives when conventional approaches would have declared the situations hopeless. Octavia had become Saren's unofficial shadow, absorbing everything she could about these revolutionary techniques. During a brief water break, she noticed Saren watching Major Talon with wary eyes. "Do you know him?" Octavia asked. "Not him specifically," Saren replied. "But I know what he represents." "Which is what questions I don't want to answer." Saren drained her water bottle and stood. "We've got movement on level 3. Fresh air pocket exposed by the last extraction." They worked through the night again. Around 3 a.m., while most of the team rested in shifts, Octavia found Saren studying structural blueprints by the light of a headlamp. "Don't you ever sleep?" Octavia asked, offering a fresh coffee. 20 minutes every 4 hours, Saren replied, accepting the cup with a nod of thanks. "More efficient?" "That's not human. It's training." Saren traced a finger along the blueprint. "Tomorrow will be more difficult. The stable areas are becoming increasingly unpredictable." "How many more do you think are alive there?" Saren's face remained impassive, but something in her eyes changed. 12, possibly 13, but we'll only reach them if the Western support holds. "And will it?" "Not without intervention." She pointed to a specific section of the diagram. "We need to stabilize this column by 0600 or we lose access to the lower levels." As dawn broke on the third day, news crews had set up permanent positions around the disaster site. The story of the mysterious woman directing miraculous rescues had spread, and journalists were desperate for footage of her, but Saren had become adept at avoiding cameras, staying just out of frame or behind equipment whenever media approached. Major Talon continued his vigil, neither interfering nor assisting. Whatever his orders, they appeared to be surveillance rather than immediate action. The morning brought unexpected hope. Using Saren's methods, they located and successfully extracted a family of 4 who had been trapped in what should have been an unsurvivable pocket beneath 3 floors of collapsed concrete. The father, emerging last, gripped Saren's hand with tears streaming down his dust-covered face. "They told us to say goodbye," he whispered, "that no one could reach us in time." "They were wrong," Saren replied simply, already turning back to her equipment. By midday, exhaustion was taking its toll on even the most seasoned rescuers. Equipment failures became more frequent, tempers shorter, but Saren maintained her methodical focus, her energy seemingly undiminished. It was during the afternoon extraction attempt that the unexpected happened. As a rescue team followed Saren's directions to reach 2 trapped survivors, part of the structure shifted. A support beam groaned, slipped, and came crashing down. Saren moved with inhuman speed, shoving two rescuers clear of the falling debris, but in doing so, she couldn't avoid it herself. The beam caught her across the back, pinning her against a slab of concrete. For the first time since her arrival, Saren's calm demeanor cracked. Pain and something like panic flashed across her face before she regained control, instructing the shock team on how to safely lift the beam without causing further collapse. When they freed her, Saren refused medical attention despite an obvious shoulder injury. Superficial, she insisted, though Octavia could see she was favoring her right side. You need to get that checked, Octavia urged. Later, Saren was already back at her equipment. We're losing stability faster than projected. We need to reach the remaining survivors within the next 6 hours. What Saren didn't know was that while she was briefly trapped, Major Talon had moved closer, observing her with intense interest. When she was freed, he made another call. This one is longer, more animated. Whatever Umbra protocol was, whatever containment meant, the timeline had clearly changed. And as Saren pushed herself harder, racing against both the failing structure and her own limits, the military presence around the perimeter quietly increased. By day 3, exhaustion had settled over the rescue operation. The death toll had climbed to 67 with dozens more still missing. But at the Meridian site, something remarkable was happening. 29 survivors extracted so far, all alive, all because of Saren's inexplicable ability to locate air pockets and direct precision rescues. Octavia had become Saren's unofficial assistant, learning techniques she'd never seen in any training manual. During a rare, quiet moment as they prepped equipment, Octavia noticed Saren applying a salve to her hands raw from moving debris. Military medical grade, Octavia observed. That's not available to civilians. Saren pocketed it without comment. You know, Octavia continued, my brother served in the 5th Special Forces. He mentioned an earthquake response unit once. Said they could predict aftershocks and find survivors when everyone else had given up. Called them the ghosts. Something flickered across Saren's face. Recognition, perhaps pain. But she remained silent. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden rumble. The ground beneath them shifted. A major aftershock rocking the already devastated city. New sections of damaged buildings collapsed, sending fresh plumes of dust skyward. Saren immediately grabbed her equipment and ran toward the Meridian. Octavia close behind. The building's remaining structure groaned ominously. Everyone out. Chief Morick ordered, seeing the danger. That's an evacuation order. But Saren was already scanning the structure with her equipment. We have 7 people still alive in there, she called back. Northwest corner, reinforced stairwell, structure will completely fail in approximately 40 minutes. Not worth the risk, Lieutenant Rafferty argued. Buildings coming down. Then you have 40 minutes to decide if 7 lives are worth saving, Saren replied, already preparing her equipment. The standoff was interrupted by Major Tolan's arrival, flanked by 4 military personnel in unmarked uniforms. This operation is now under military jurisdiction, he announced. And you, he pointed at Saren, are to be removed from this site immediately. Chief Morick stepped between them. On what authority? This is a civilian disaster response. National security, Talon replied coldly. This woman is impersonating a deceased military officer. A shocked silence fell over the group. Saren continued preparing her equipment as if she hadn't heard. What are you talking about? Morick demanded. Captain Serenade died 5 years ago in Operation Callisto Ridge, Talon stated. Whoever this woman is, she's using a dead hero's identity. The revelation sent murmurs through the rescue team. Saren finally looked up, her expression unreadable. You have 38 minutes to arrest me, she said calmly to Talon. After I get those people out. Before Talon could respond, the building shifted again with a sickening groan. Clock's ticking, Saren added, strapping on a helmet. Chief Morick made his decision. We're going in. Anyone who wants to help, gear up. Everyone else, clear the area. To everyone's surprise, Talon didn't interfere. Instead, he watched with narrow eyes as Saren led a team of volunteers, including Octavia and reluctantly Lieutenant Rafferty, toward the dangerously unstable building. What followed was the most harrowing rescue yet. Saren navigated them through crumbling corridors and unstable floors, each step calculated with precision. When a support beam suddenly gave way, she shoved Rafferty clear, nearly crushing herself. "Why?" he asked afterward as they continued deeper into the death trap. "Because saving lives isn't about who deserves it," she replied simply. They reached the stairwell with 12 minutes to spare. Inside, they found 7 survivors, including Dr. Indira Num, the city's renowned neurologist. As Saren helped free her from beneath a fallen cabinet, the older woman squinted through dust-covered glasses. "I know you," Dr. Num gasped. "Captain Adair. You're alive." The rescue team exchanged glances. "We need to move," Saren replied, avoiding the question. "Buildings coming down." The extraction was a race against time. As they guided survivors through the maze of debris, the structure began its final collapse. Saren repeatedly positioned herself in the most dangerous locations, creating paths for others while risking herself. When the last survivor was clear, a violent shudder ran through the building. Octavia and Rafferty made it out, but Saren was still inside when a massive section of concrete broke free above the exit. "Saren," Octavia screamed. For several agonizing moments, dust obscured everything. Then, impossibly, Saren emerged, bleeding from a head wound, but carrying a small box she'd gone back for. Dr. Num's research. Decades of work that would have been lost. As medical teams rushed to treat the survivors, Saren stumbled to her knees, finally showing exhaustion. She looked up to find Major Talon standing over her, and for a moment, resignation crossed her face. Then Talon did something unexpected. He snapped to attention and saluted her. "Captain Adair," he said formally. "Your country owes you an explanation." The military personnel with him formed a protective line, not to arrest Saren, but to shield her from the approaching news crews. "What's happening?" Chief Morik demanded. "Classified," Talon replied. But Dr. Num spoke up from her stretcher. "Captain Serena Adair," she said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Creator of the Earthquake Response Tactical Unit." She developed prediction models that revolutionized disaster response. Then Callisto Ridge happened. "Indira," Saren warned quietly. "The world should know," Dr. Num insisted. "When the Callisto Ridge earthquake hit that research station, her entire team went in. The mountain collapsed. Everyone was reported dead, including her. But she wasn't dead, was she? She was the only survivor." Saren's face had gone pale, the blood from her head wound stark against her skin. "They were my responsibility," she said, her voice barely audible. "I followed protocol. I was wrong. They died." Understanding dawned on Octavia's face. "So you went underground, appearing at disaster sites worldwide, using what you learned to never make the same mistakes again." Saren finished. Night had fallen by the time the medical team finished treating Saren's injuries. Despite their insistence that she needed rest and observation, she refused to leave the disaster site. Instead, she sat alone at the edge of the command area, staring at the collapsed meridian. Major Talon approached carrying 2 cups of coffee. He offered one to Saren, who accepted it after a moment's hesitation. "We thought you died with your team," he said, sitting beside her. "The body never recovered, but the structural collapse was catastrophic. No survivable spaces according to our models." "Your models were wrong," Saren replied flatly. "Like yours were at Callisto Ridge." Saren's hand tightened around the cup. "Is that why you're here? To remind me of my failures?" "I'm here because for 5 years we've been tracking miracle rescues around the world," Talon explained. Indonesia 2021, Haiti 2022, Iran 2023. Rescue techniques that shouldn't have worked but did. Technology that doesn't officially exist. And at the center of each incident, reports of a woman who appeared from nowhere and vanished when the job was done. "And now you found me. What happens next?" Court-martial for desertion? Talon shook his head. You were declared dead, Captain. The military doesn't court-martial ghosts. He paused. What we want is to understand how you've done it. Your new methods, your equipment. The Earthquake Response Tactical Unit was disbanded after Callisto Ridge, but your work, your research, it could save countless lives if properly implemented. My research got my entire team killed, Saren said bitterly. 12 of the best people I've ever known, buried under a mountain because I believed my models were infallible. And now I know better. Every situation is unique. Every building falls differently. Sometimes the right call defies the algorithm. That's what makes you so effective, Talon observed. You've combined science with instinct, experience. Saren looked at him wearily. What does the military want from me? To come in from the cold, work with us officially, train others. Your country needs you, Captain. Saren stood abruptly. I'm not a captain anymore. I work alone for a reason. Before Talon could respond, Octavia approached, her expression urgent. Saren, we've got a problem. New life signs detected in the eastern sector. The area was cleared yesterday, but the aftershock must have shifted things. 3 survivors, but the road is extremely unstable. Without hesitation, Saren was on her feet, already moving toward her equipment. The conversation with Talon, whatever it meant for her future, would have to wait. This discussion isn't over, Captain Talon called after her. Saren didn't look back. It is until those people are safe. The Eastern Sector rescue proved to be the most challenging yet. The aftershock had turned an already treacherous environment into a death trap of precariously balanced debris. With each passing hour, the chance of another aftershock increased. As Saren led a small team into the ruins, Chief Morik pulled Octavia aside. What's her story, really? Octavia hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. From what I've pieced together, she developed some kind of advanced disaster response protocols for the military. Something went wrong on a mission called Callisto Ridge. Her team died. She was presumed dead, too. And now she's what? A rogue rescue specialist? I think she's someone trying to make amends, Octavia replied. Every life she saves is one more against whatever number haunts her. Inside the collapsed structure, Saren moved with the confidence of someone who could read the building's remains like a map. She directed the team through spaces that seemed impossibly small around dangers invisible to the untrained eye. How do you know? Rafferty asked at one point, as Saren directed them to avoid what appeared to be a stable section of floor. Microfractures in the support beams, she explained briefly. That section will collapse under any additional weight. True to her prediction, when they tossed a piece of debris onto the area, the entire section gave way, crashing to the floor below. Rafferty stared at her with newfound respect. You've got to teach others how to do this. That's what Major Talon wants, Saren admitted. To put me back in a classroom, turn my methods into a new protocol. Would that be so bad? Saren didn't answer immediately. They continued in silence until they reached a section where the path forward was blocked by a massive concrete slab. We need to find another way, Rafferty said. There isn't one, Saren replied, studying her equipment readouts. The survivors are directly beyond this. We need to cut through. That's a load-bearing slab. Cut it. And this whole section could come down on us. Not if we do it precisely. Saren began unpacking specialized cutting equipment from her backpack. I need everyone else to pull back 50 feet like hell, Octavia said. You're not doing this alone. This isn't a discussion. I'm not risking anyone else. That's what this is about, isn't it? Rafferty realized. Callisto Ridge, you lost your team following protocol, and now you refuse to let anyone take risks but yourself. Saren's hands stilled for a moment. You don't understand. I think I do, Rafferty countered. You're punishing yourself one rescue at a time. Before Saren could respond, her equipment emitted a warning tone. She checked the readout, her expression darkening. We're out of time. Structural integrity is failing faster than projected. We have less than 20 minutes before this entire section collapses. Then we worked together, Octavia insisted. Faster that way. After a moment's hesitation, Saren nodded. Your call, but we do this my way, precisely as I direct. Working together, they cut through the concrete with millimeter precision, creating an opening just large enough to access the pocket beyond. Inside, they found 3 construction workers who had been trapped during the initial earthquake and missed in earlier sweeps. They were extracting the last survivor when Saren's equipment registered an ominous warning. The structure around them was seconds from catastrophic failure. Move! Saren shouted, pushing the others ahead of her. Get them out now! The rescue team raced through the collapsing corridors, debris raining down around them. Just as they reached the exit point, a support beam gave way directly above Octavia and the injured survivor she was helping. Without hesitation, Saren threw herself forward, using her body to shield them as the beam crashed down. The impact drove her to her knees, but somehow she maintained enough strength to hold the weight just long enough for Octavia to pull the survivor clear. When they finally emerged from the building seconds before it collapsed entirely behind them, Saren was barely conscious, blood seeping through her shirt from reopened wounds. As medical teams rushed to treat her, Major Talon approached again. This is why we need you, Captain, he said quietly. Not just your methods, but your instinct, your willingness to put others first. Through pain-clouded eyes, Saren looked up at him. My team, she whispered, at Callisto Ridge. Did they suffer? The question caught Talon off guard. After a moment, he shook his head. It was instantaneous. They didn't feel anything. You're lying, Saren said. But there was almost gratitude in her voice. Yes, Talon admitted. But it's what you needed to hear. As the medics loaded her onto a stretcher, Saren caught Octavia's hand. The red compartment in my backpack. There's a drive. Everything I've learned, every technique, it's all there. Why are you giving this to me? Because you asked the right questions, Saren replied weakly. And because someone needs to carry it forward. 1 week after the earthquake, Port Amira was slowly beginning to recover. Emergency crews had transitioned from rescue to recovery and temporary housing units dotted the city's parks. In the central plaza, now serving as the coordination hub for relief efforts, Mayor Bannister prepared for a ceremony honoring those who had contributed to the rescue efforts. A podium was set up, medals laid out, news crews positioned. Is she coming? Bannister asked Chief Morick. He shook his head. No one's seen her since yesterday, militaries being tight-lipped. The ceremony proceeded without its most crucial hero. One by one, emergency workers were recognized for their courage. When they reached what should have been Saren's moment, Major Talon stepped forward instead. On behalf of Captain Adair, he said formally, I accept this recognition with the understanding that her work remains classified. What I can tell you is this. After Callisto Ridge, Captain Adair was presumed dead. In truth, she resigned her commission and disappeared. Since then, she has appeared at 17 major disaster sites worldwide, saving hundreds of lives while avoiding any recognition or compensation. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Her methods and technology have been incorporated into our current disaster response protocols, Talon continued. Many of you have been using her techniques without knowing their origin. As the ceremony concluded, Octavia slipped away. She had a hunch where to find Saren. On the outskirts of the emergency camp, in a small tent away from the others, she found her packing her now familiar backpack. You're leaving, Octavia said. It wasn't a question. Saren nodded, not pausing in her methodical packing. They want to give you a medal. I don't do medals, Saren replied. Or ceremonies. Octavia sat down on a crate. Why? You save more lives than anyone. You deserve recognition. Saren finally stopped packing and looked up. Recognition gets in the way. Teams get attached. Make emotional decisions. I learned at Callisto Ridge that following protocol, even good protocol, can get people killed. Sometimes you need to be able to make impossible choices without hesitation. And you can only do that alone. Octavia challenged. It's worked so far. Saren returned to her packing. Your techniques saved lives here. What happens when the next disaster strikes and you're not there? Saren paused, considering. Then she reached into her backpack and removed a specialized tool, the one Octavia had been most fascinated by during their rescues. For the next time, Saren said, handing it to Octavia. There's always a next time. How does it work? Octavia asked, examining the device. For the next hour, Saren explained not just the tool, but her methodology, her calculations, her understanding of structural failures and human survival factors. Octavia realized this was Saren's real gift. Not the medal she would never accept, but knowledge that could save lives long after she was gone. As dawn broke over the recovering city, Saren shouldered her backpack. Where will you go? Octavia asked. Saren nodded toward a small television in the corner of the tent where a news alert showed early warnings of seismic activity near Japan's coast. There, she said simply. They walked together to the edge of the camp. No grand goodbye, no promises to stay in touch, just mutual respect between two people who had seen both the worst and best of humanity in the wreckage of disaster. As Saren walked away, Octavia called after her, "How do you do it? Keep going from one disaster to another." Saren paused, looking back. Because someone has to, and because sometimes survival isn't enough, people deserve to be found. Major Talon was waiting by the camp perimeter, leaning against a military vehicle. You know, I can't let you just disappear again, he said as Saren approached. You can't stop me either. She didn't break stride. I'm not here to stop you. He stepped away from the vehicle. I'm here to make you an offer. Saren paused, wary. What kind of offer? Autonomy, resources, support when you need it, distance when you don't. He handed her a secure phone. This connects directly to me. No tracking, no surveillance, your terms, your missions, your methods. Why would the military agree to that? Because you're more effective than an entire disaster response team. And because some of us remember what the ERTU was meant to be before bureaucracy got in the way. Saren studied the phone, then slipped it into her pocket without commitment. After Callisto Ridge, the official record remains unchanged. Captain Serenade died a hero, but if that hero happens to show up at disaster sites around the world, well, that's above my pay grade. A ghost of a smile crossed Saren's face. I'm still not coming back to train your teams. Then train one person, Talon countered. Someone who impressed you, someone who asked the right questions. Saren glanced back toward the camp where Octavia was already studying the tools she'd been given. I'll think about it, she said, which they both knew wasn't a no. Talon nodded once, then stepped aside, allowing her to pass. Safe travels, Captain. The world needs more ghosts like you. As Saren walked away, she felt lighter somehow. Not absolved of Callisto Ridge, she would carry that weight forever, but perhaps less alone in bearing it. 3 months later, Port Amira had begun to rebuild in earnest. The temporary shelters were being replaced by permanent housing, and debris clearing had given way to reconstruction. In what would become the city's new memorial park, a dedication ceremony was underway. Chief Morik, now appointed as the city's director of emergency management, unveiled a wall listing the names of those who had helped save lives during the earthquake. Near the end was a conspicuous blank space where a name should have been. They offered to add her name, Morik mentioned to Octavia, who stood beside him in her new uniform as head of the city's specialized rescue training unit. She wouldn't want it, Octavia replied, her hand resting on the case that contains Saren's tool, now replicated in part of standard equipment for her trainees. Have you heard from her? Octavia smiled slightly. Not directly, but there was an earthquake in northern Japan 6 weeks ago. Reports mentioned unusually effective rescue techniques. Survivors found in locations that should have been impossible to reach. Nearby, 8-year-old Rin Calloway placed flowers at the blank space on the memorial. Her parents watched with pride as their daughter, once trapped beneath tons of concrete, performed her weekly ritual. The lady with no name saved me, she explained to a curious onlooker. She finds people when no one else can. After the ceremony, Octavia received a message on her secure phone. A recent addition, she told colleagues, was for specialized emergency communications. The message contained only coordinates and a time 3 days from now. She smiled to herself. The training was about to begin. 6 months after the earthquake, Porto Mira hosted an international conference on disaster response innovation. Emergency management professionals from around the world gathered to learn about the Porto Mira protocol, a revolutionary approach to urban rescue operations developed by the city's new specialized unit. Octavia, as the head of that unit, led the presentation. She demonstrated techniques and technology that many attendees found almost unbelievably effective. Where did these methods originate? Asked a representative from Japan's disaster agency. They evolved from various sources, Octavia replied diplomatically. Field experience, military research, and practical innovation during our own crisis. After the presentation, Major Talon approached her. Nicely done. You didn't mention her once. That was our agreement. Octavia confirmed. The method spread, not the legend. How's the training going? Intensely, Octavia admitted. She's a demanding teacher when she actually shows up. And how often is that? When there's not a disaster somewhere needing her attention, which isn't often. They walked together through the exhibition hall where vendors displayed the latest in rescue equipment. Several booths featured knockoff versions of Saren's tools, none quite capturing the precision of the originals. The military would still like to debrief her properly about Callisto Ridge, Talon mentioned. There are unanswered questions. She's answered them the only way that matters to her, Octavia replied. By making sure what happened there never happens again. As if summoned by their conversation, Octavia's secure phone vibrated with an incoming message. She checked it discreetly. Eastern Turkey, magnitude 6.4. I'm already en route. Meet me if you can. Duty calls? Talon asked, noting her expression. Always. Octavia was already mentally calculating travel arrangements. The advantage of specialized training. They call us when things get impossible. They call you because she taught you, Talon corrected. Don't forget that. Never, Octavia assured him. After all, someone has to keep her legend alive, even if we can't use her name. As news spread about the Turkish earthquake, relief coordinators worldwide mobilized resources. In conference rooms and emergency operations centers, the same question was asked. Would the Porto Mira specialist make an appearance? The legend had grown over the months. Whispers of a rescue expert who appeared at the worst disaster sites, saved lives others couldn't reach, then vanished. Some believed it was military black ops. Others thought it was a team masquerading as an individual. Few suspected it was simply one woman with a backpack and a burden to bear. On a cargo flight bound for Turkey, Octavia reviewed the seismic data on her tablet. Beside her sat two of her most promising trainees, nervous but determined to apply their training to a real disaster. What if we can't find the survivors like she does? One asked. You won't, Octavia admitted. Not at first. It took her years to develop her instincts. But you have something she didn't have when she started. Her methods. Will she be there? The woman from Porto Mira. Octavia smiled. If there are people to be found, she'll find them. True to prediction, when they arrived at the disaster site, reports were already circulating about a woman who had appeared from nowhere and begun directing local teams to survivors in seemingly impossible locations. By the time Octavia's team made it to the hardest hit area, Saren had already established a systematic rescue operation. She acknowledged Octavia with a brief nod before returning to her work. They worked side by side through the night, Saren leading while Octavia translated her methods for the trainees. When dawn broke, bringing with it the 24-hour mark when survival rates typically plummeted, Saren pointed to a collapsed apartment building that emergency services had written off as unsurvivable. Your turn, she told Octavia. Show me what you've learned. Under Saren's watchful eye, Octavia led her team through the assessment, setting up equipment and analyzing the structure. When she identified a potential survival pocket that conventional methods would have missed, Saren's slight smile was more rewarding than any medal could have been. The extraction was successful, yielding 4 survivors, including a child no older than Ren had been. As the medical team took over, Saren slipped away from the congratulations and cameras, resuming her work at another site. Later, as they took a brief rest, sharing water and protein bars, Octavia asked the question that had been on her mind for months. Will you ever come back? Officially, I mean, take credit for what you've created. Saren looked out over the devastated city where rescue lights pierced the darkness and hope persisted despite overwhelming odds. This is my redemption, not my career, she answered finally. The people I lost at Callisto Ridge deserved better than my mistakes. This is how I honor them, by being better than the protocols that failed them. And if you could save more lives by teaching others? I am teaching others. Saren nodded toward Octavia and her team. Just not the way the military wants. A comfortable silence fell between them. 2 professionals who understood both the science and the soul of their work. There's a ceremony next month, Octavia mentioned, 1-year commemoration of the Port Amira earthquake. They're completing the memorial wall. Still with a blank space, I hope. Of course, Saren nodded her approval, then checked her equipment as it signaled a new reading. We've got movement in Sector 4. Survivors shifting position, probably running out of air. They were both on their feet instantly, conversation forgotten, focused entirely on the next life waiting to be saved. And so it continued in Turkey and in disasters yet to come. The legend grew, but the name remained unspoken in official reports. Rescue workers worldwide began to whisper about someone who might appear when all hope seemed lost. A ghost who left nothing behind but survivors and techniques that defied conventional wisdom. In disaster response circles, they began calling these incidents Adair anomalies. Impossible rescues that shouldn't have succeeded but did. Some believed they were just lucky coincidences. Others knew better. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition but deserved more than anyone else? Octavia would ask her trainees. That's who we aspire to be. And somewhere in the world, in whatever disaster zone needed her most, Saren Adair continued her solitary mission, carrying the weight of those she couldn't save at Callisto Ridge by ensuring she never failed to find those who could still be saved. The woman with no badge, no orders, and always a plan.